Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here. If you're a fan of handmade touches and creative inspiration, you're going to enjoy today's scrapbook project. I'm working with the April Hip Kit titled A Touch of Whimsy, and it's packed with playful stitching, floral, and crafty patterns. Let's take a closer look at all of the items in this April Hip Kit collection. There are some pattern papers that look like quilt blocks, crochet textures, stitched buttons. There are so many great pieces for crafting lovers. I'll be using several of these patterns today, along with the coordinating cardstock and embellishments. This includes foam alpha stickers, felt clouds, chipboard die cuts, cardstock die cuts that create these lovely little applique-like flowers, cardstock die cut shapes, puffy stickers, and cardstock stickers. Each month, HIPKIT offers a coordinating cardstock collection that matches the monthly kit perfectly. I'm going to be using quite a few of the colors in this collection to create the flowers for my applique. One of my favorite pieces is the new applique flower die set. This pairs perfectly with the applique flowers pattern paper, which we will be cutting out in just a moment. As I create today's layout, I'll bring in a few additional supplies. As always, I encourage you to use what you have in your collection, but if you would like a list of the items I'm using, one has been provided for you in the description below, along with my discount code to the HIPKIT site. Let's go ahead and get started with the project. To get started, I have a quick sketch that I drew to map out where the photo and floral elements are going to sit. I knew that I wanted flowers in all four corners and curved and straight stitching lines connecting them. With a ruler, I'm going to draw a large X across this 11.5-inch piece of cardstock. I'm going to use that X as my guide for the template. I'm going to line up the pencil marks with the stems that I have on the template. And then I'm going to use some temporary tape to hold this template in place. I'm going to place a foam mat underneath and add some stitching holes using a pickup tool. You can also use a piercing tool, embroidery needle, or even a cutting machine with a debossing or perforating tip for this step. I'm going to finish adding these stitching marks to my page, and then I'm going to walk you through the process of adding simple stitches to your scrapbook layouts. Now that I've finished adding all of the little piercing holes for my stitches, I'm going to remove this template, and you'll be able to see that this worked out perfectly as a guide for all of my stitching. I'm going to quickly erase those pencil lines and prep my embroidery floss. I'm going to be using 4 strands of embroidery floss for my stems. Most embroidery floss comes in 6 strands. I'm going to go ahead and separate these out. And then I'm going to run it through some embroidery wax to keep things smooth and tangle-free. This wax really helps when you're stitching on paper. I use a needle threader to get all 4 strands through the eye of the needle. Now, if you're new to stitching on paper, don't worry. It is easier than it looks, and it adds such a special homemade touch. I'm going to start my first stitch here, and I'm going to leave about a 1/2 inch tail on the back. I don't add knots to the back of my stitching. I prefer to secure them in place with a little bit of tape. For this page, I'm going to use some simple stitches to create the vines and stems. Now, if you're comfortable with back stitches or want to get fancy with your embroidery, feel free to do that. I have other videos on my channel that walk you through more embroidery styles that are perfect for paper crafting. I would love to know if you have ever tried stitching on your scrapbook pages. What embroidery stitch is your go-to? Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Before I build my florals, I need to cut out these little applique flowers. This pattern paper comes with the April kit. The die is designed to cut out each one of these flower shapes. I'm going to select a few of these and cut them out, along with some flowers and other pieces that I'm going to need for my layout. So now that the stitching's done, we're going to build our floral frame with all of these die cuts. I have the applique flowers from the pattern paper that I cut using that coordinating die. And I use that small circle, which is the center of the flower, to cut out the So Amazing pattern and some happiness pink cardstock circles. I also cut some leaves from green cardstock. In each corner, I'm going to adhere an applique flower. I chose patterns with a soft, light background so that they don't steal focus from the photo. In the center of these, I'm going to layer some pale blue buttons. None of the floral patterns are replicated on that paper, and I wanted to bring a little bit of cohesiveness to these florals. I use the circle die to cut out all of these little buttons from this pattern here. In between the large applique flowers, I'm going to add some small pink buds. As I adhere these in place, I'm going to show you real quick how I created these. Using that center circle die of the applique flower, I cut out 8 of the pink circles from the So Amazing pattern and 8 from that happiness pink. I'm folding the darker pink circles in half, and I'm going to cut down that fold line. This is going to give me 2 halves for my flower. I'm just going to bring in some liquid adhesive and adhere these 2 halves on either side of the striped circle to form a flower bud. I'm using liquid adhesive because I plan on adding some stitching to these when I'm done. Now I wanted my stripes to go horizontal, so when I glued each of those halves down, I made sure that the stripes were going the right direction. Little details like this tie all of the elements of your page together and create balance and cohesiveness on a design. My photo is cut at 3.5 inches. And I'm going to place it over this stitched circle that I cut out of Liberty Blue cardstock. Now that all my flowers are in place, I'm going to bring in those stitched leaves. I love how they have such a beautiful stitching detail around the edges. This is great for those of you who don't want to add any hand stitching. You can still have the texture and look of stitching without all of the work. I mentioned earlier that the April Hip Kit has quite a few craft-themed inspired pieces, and many of them include sewing and stitching. I was inspired by those elements to create a piece that looked like an applique quilt or a home decor piece. I often look at quilts for color combinations, and many of those have beautiful floral applique patterns. I wanted to replicate that with paper. Now, it did take quite a bit of pre-planning. I had to draw out my design ahead of time and determine what size was needed for the flowers and leaves and buds that I wanted to add. But having this planned out ahead of time made the assembly process go so much easier. Have you ever tried recreating quilt patterns on your layout? I would love for you to tell me about your favorites in the comments below. Once all of the leaves were added, I felt like those larger flowers needed some pink accents to match the floral buds that I added around the rest of the page. It took me a moment to pry up those little blue buttons, but I was able to cover them easily with some pink circles and pink floral stickers. Once those were in place, I layered the blue buttons over the top, and I feel like this did a much better job of bringing balance to the page. My photo is cut at 3.5 inches, and I layered it over that Liberty blue cardstock. I cut this using a stitched circle die. This matches all of the other stitched elements on the layout. I love how it sits right in the center, framed by all those vines and flowers. To embellish around the photo, I'm going to build a small cluster with a large blue flower and a couple of strawberry die cuts. I like the pink patterns of these and how well they match the pink florals that I added to this page. Below, I'm going to add a small tag. This creates a horizontal grounding piece for the embellishments. I'm also going to bring in a few phrases. I'm adding a large title that says "Life is Sweet." I'm also going to add a puffy sticker that says "Wild and Sassy," which fits the personality of these two friends perfectly. Above that phrase, I'm going to add a pink heart. This creates some balance in that cluster by creating a visual triangle with the strawberries I added above. I'm also going to bring in some more pink with the words "You're gorgeous." I don't want to add much to the left because I don't want to cover up all that applique I added. I'm just going to pop a little butterfly over here in a soft blue. And I'm also going to add a couple of pink dots to create a nice frame. I'm going to add a few more finishing details to this layout, and then I'll show you the completed design. Here is the completed page. I added a bold floral border to frame everything and finished off the stitching on the leaves and buds. I also added some white floss to the large flowers. These final touches bring the whole design together. If you would like to recreate this layout, the supply list and discount link are in the description below. Make sure to use my code Miss Carrie at checkout. And if you're not already a member, make sure to join the HIPKIT Facebook group. It's a fantastic place to get inspiration, share your work, and connect with others. I want to thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who loves scrapbooking. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.